who haven't blindly jumped onto the next generation console bandwagon and found out that it's kind of like the previous bandwagon you jumped off, only with more lies and with Jesse from Breaking Bad inadvertently turning your machine on whenever that bloody advert appears on the telly, then the chances are you might have come across the free Games with Gold offer that Xbox have generously been awarding to those players who were still on Xbox Live Gold for the 360. Since this monthly offer started just over a year ago, we've essentially been given well over 30 video games for free. These have included such AAA titles like Assassin's Creed 2, Halo Reach, Saints Row the Third, Sleeping Dogs, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and many others. Not to mention some of these smaller titles like Battle Block Theatre, Dust, and Charlie Murder. This month, fittingly enough just in time for Halloween, we've got Darksiders II, a game where you find yourself playing as the sheer personification of Death himself. You would have thought that the enemies in this game would do the time-honoured tradition of dropping dead the very second that Death even places a finger on them. But no, that wouldn't make for a very interesting game now, would it? So instead, Death has to go in with all guns, scythes, and other stabby things blazing. And why exactly does he need to do this? Well, following the events of the first game, the entire Earth has been fried, fractured, and generally fucked over, thanks to your brother and fellow horseman of the apocalypse, War. Now, you would have thought that what with being one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, bringing in the end of days would have been part of the old job description. But apparently the apocalypse wasn't supposed to happen, mainly because War didn't fill out the correct application form or something. So it's up to Death to try and get this mess all sorted out. Well, it has to be Death, doesn't it? Famine's too busy eating all the pies, and all Pestilence can do is cough on people. Except, hang on a minute, that's not what they're called in this game. Instead, your fellow horsemen are known as Strife and Fury. Seeing as we've already got War as a horseman, aren't those two just a wee bit redundant? Besides which, what is Strife going to do? Force everyone to take a week off due to stress-related illnesses? So yes, if it's not enough that War is in the crapper because he didn't fill out the appropriate Armageddon application form, now Death has to travel to the Tree of Life to essentially put in an appeal towards the decision to punish War. Since when did the end of the world involve so much paperwork and bureaucracy? And whoever knew that War and Death were so close? Maybe they literally are brothers then. If that's the case, then perhaps War is adopted, because I swear that Death looks like a cross between Skeletor's awkward teenage years and the main bloke from the old PlayStation 1 game, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. Like the previous game, Darksiders II is essentially God of War with some Legend of Zelda thrown in for good measure, along with elements from a bunch of other popular titles from the last decade or so. But despite being a cooking pot of ideas from lots of other games, Darksiders 2 works remarkably well. This time around, probably to avoid being described as like God of War, but the sequel has a lot more RPG elements than before, and you'll now probably spend a good portion of time comparing the stats on the various different pieces of armour and weapons that you'll come across on a regular basis. So regular, in fact, that the need to visit the various shopkeepers in the game seems a bit, redundant, really. You'll end up with a big old pile of cash after working your way through a dungeon, but why pay a fortune for a massive axe with fire damage when later on a giant plant-insect hybrid is going to vomit up a more powerful version of that for free later on? Speaking of being free, even though I got this game for, well, nothing, I would have been happy if I'd have actually paid money for the game, to be honest with you, because you're certainly getting value for money. I've clocked in about 20 hours of gameplay so far, and that's without tackling all the side missions as well. It certainly makes a nice change that the AAA title can't be completed in a single afternoon and that you've actually got plenty of things to do. I have to say though, controlling Death can take a bit of getting used to, and the dodgy camera angles don't exactly help. A bit of perseverance is required in order to get the hang of the various wall walking, climbing, jumping and swimming mechanics. Luckily, the entire first dungeon you find yourself in is literally a tutorial level. Also luckily, when it comes to kicking some demon ass, Death plays like a dream when he's doing this. And it's also a pleasure to ride across the landscapes on Death's horse, Binky. Despair. And don't worry about getting lost in some of these dungeons, as Death is aided by a raven called Dust, who will show him the way. This means that even those with a poor sense of direction won't get hopelessly stuck too much, although I do think they missed a trick by not calling the raven something like Quoth. Oh well. As an actual title, Darksiders doesn't really make sense. Presumably the Darksiders are the various demons and monsters that you face, but they never get referred to as that throughout this game, nor in its prequel. So it's a pretty weak name for this game overall. Now to be honest, there's been a couple of times where I've accidentally called it Dark Riders by mistake, but surely Dark Riders makes more sense as a title, considering that Death and his chums are supposed to be the horsemen of the apocalypse. Dark Riders, they're horsemen, they ride on horses. Makes sense, doesn't it? Also with the title, it means that it kind of gets lumped in with other similar sounding titles like Dark Souls, Dark Sector, Dark Void, Darkstalkers, Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, and of course The Darkness, which makes it the second video in a row that I've mentioned this game. There is a better name that could have been used for a game about a supernatural embodiment of armed conflict, but I think that's been used already. It's a shame that the game doesn't get a chance to stand on its own 2 feet to be countered, to be honest, and that it's inevitably going to be compared to its prequel, which again was like God of War, but... For this reason, Darksiders II has been criminally overlooked by the game's playing public, which is a real shame. It really should have been released as a standalone title, rather than trying to connect it to the previous game. There was talk of a third game at one point to round off the story as a trilogy, but seeing as THQ are now essentially no more, I wouldn't be holding my breath for it. I thoroughly enjoyed Darksiders 2, and I would say that if you're able to download Darksiders 2 for free as part of Games with Gold this month, then definitely do so. But if you're unable to do that, yet find it going cheap somewhere else, then by all means pick it up and play it. You won't regret it. The Big Daddy D gives Darksiders 2 a thumbs up. And do be sure to come back for another Halloween-related games review special type thing very soon, peoples, when we take a look at the classic platformer for the Sega Mega Drive, Decap Attack. But until then, goodbye.